I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Inis Big Box as well as the Nemed expansion. I'll be going into both of these things separately. I'll have timestamps for you down below in case you want to jump to one or the other, but I'll be talking about my opinion of the Inis Big Box and what it brings to the table as far as the component differences, quality of life, art, graphic design, all of that, as well as the Nemed expansion and my thoughts on the two modules that this brings to your Inis experience. Additionally, if you want to get a bit more content, I have an unboxing I've already done on this where I kind of give a loose overview of how to play Inis as well as all the expansion content and then show you all the various components in more detail. That just recently went up on the channel. And then I'll also have for you, if you want to go back to my original review of Inis, if you want to see my thoughts on that game, I have that linked down below as well. Spoiler to that, I think Inis is an amazing experience, a 5 out of 5, one of my favorite games in my collection and one that I'm always happy to pick up and play. It is just such a good experience. Before we dive into this though, I'll note this is a prototype, rules, components, subject to change, although it is very final production in terms of, I hope it's not final production, at least in one aspect, which we'll get to in my review, and then of course I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. With that said, let's start with the Inis Big Box and then go to the Nemed expansion. The Inis Big Box contains a few things. It contains both expansions for the game, so you have the Seasons of Inis as well as Nemed. That's just a good thing as far as including all the content in one easy to get, store, all of that location. And it also has some adjustments to the graphic design, minor changes to not necessarily the art overall. The art of the game seems to be the same, but things like different color schemes. The back of these tiles are different. The card art for various cards are different. These tile art is like spruced up a bit. It's a bit more popping. I don't know if they actually made actual changes or they just changed the way it's being printed, but these are all just a little bit better. And again, you can see that comparison in my unboxing video for the Inis Big Box. And my opinion here is going to be kind of short and sweet. Well, mostly short and sweet. I think most of the small changes, and they are all small changes, there's no major changes here. Most of the small changes I'm a fan of. I like the overall art, the new graphic design layout for the art. I like that on the cards. I like the back of these tiles here. Those are just like a nice cleaner design. I love the way the art pops more. I'm not as much of a fan, again, if you watch the unboxing, you've seen some of this. I'm not as much of a fan on the backs of these cards. I kind of like the original style of them, versus this is a little bit more muted in terms of the color palette. Not the color itself. The colors aren't muted. The color palette is a bit different than the stronger green, yellow, red of the original. I do still like this. I think it's very artsy, but I think I still have a soft spot for me in terms of the original, although I wouldn't be surprised if many of you, especially if you're new to the game, think this is better. I think this overall looks better. The other's just a bit more color popping, and I did like that. So for the most part, all the general changes are just good. This box cover art with the gold foiling and the style, everything absolutely beautiful, and especially holding it, like watching like the light shimmer off this in all these different kinds of ways. It's just it's a really feels like a quality big box, even though the big box, I haven't actually measured it to the original box, but it's kind of mostly the same size. All the stuff fits nicely into the box. It's very condensed. It's not like a big box. It's like including all the stuff big box. Now, the one downside as far as the big box goes is I'll say that I don't love the new tokens quite as much, and some are not as bad as others, like the basic D tokens. I'm fine with these. Again, I kind of like the originals. The originals had a bit more color to it, were shaped like a harp. These just feel like a dry square. Similar to calling not Bren, when you call contender, when you say you're a contender for the game, these, again, they don't feel as inspired as the original. They're fine. The originals were fine too. These, I think the fact that everything's just more square just kind of makes it feel a little bit less, I don't know, interesting or cool. And then additionally, all the various round tokens of the game, like all the Bren tokens and all that, I like the original tokens more. I felt there was more character and color to those. So for the most part, I think the changes of the big box are good. I do miss the tokens of the original box. Of course, you can mash together your original tokens if you have them and just make a hybrid Frankenstein copy that gives you the best of both worlds, but then you're kind of pillaging an entire game that could be gifted, traded, sold, whatever, just for the sake of a few tokens. So mostly a positive as far as the big box goes. So my opinion of the big box is, I think it's a good, I think it's a better than the original, with one or two small steps backwards. But if I had to pick one or the other, I would absolutely pick the big box. Overall, it just feels a drop more premium, a drop more. Nothing too crazy. If you have your original game, it's going to be 98% the same, and in some cases a little better. But in the case of the big box, I definitely think it's a good upgrade to the game. Which brings us to the Nemed expansion. The Nemed expansion has two main aspects. Well, I guess three technically. There's going to be the 5 new tiles for the game. So new tiles that you can add to your game experience. That should give you a little bit more variety. As far as my opinion of the new tiles, I've gone through the abilities of them. They're nice. Nothing's crazy. None of them are game breaking in any way. They're nice to have additional variety. 1 or 2 of them feel a little similar to existing abilities. I guess if you have enough tiles, there gets to be a certain point where it's harder and harder to come up with something interesting or innovative that isn't like 4 blocks of text. So 1 or 2 of them are a little similar, but overall they're just more abilities. I don't feel I needed them, but I certainly don't mind having them in my repertoire to have more variety to the gameplay experience as I go through it. Then from the more modular aspect, the 2 modules the expansion has, the first is going to be the dedicated sanctuaries, I believe it's called. It's called Nemetons and dedicated sanctuaries. Dedicated sanctuaries are the opportunity that when you place a sanctuary on the board, you can place it, and then if there's not already a dedicated sanctuary in that area, you can take one of the 3 sanctuaries that was set aside at the beginning of the game. You're going to do these three over here. Randomly, you're going to grab those cards from currently 5. I hope there's more because I want that additional variety. But you're going to add those cards to the table over there, and effectively you have the opportunity to dedicate a sanctuary. And you can say, I'm dedicating the sanctuary to Conan over here, and then you're going to put the Conan miniature on the board, and that is a dedicated sanctuary to Conan. That also introduces a new ability to the game, and you can do this for each of these one at a time whenever you build a new sanctuary, but again, different locations each time. You can't have multiple sanctuaries in the same spot dedicated to different people. But now you have a new action in the game. You can make an offering. In this case, the offering is discard a card that can trigger a clash, and then the ability you get, the favor, is you can place up to 3 clans in total in territories where you're present, but you cannot become chieftain of a territory by doing so. So it gives you 3 clans for a card, which is a good trade-off, but not in a way that shifts who owns the territory. You either already have to own it, or you have to still not own it after it. Either one of those would work. And each of these 5 cards gives you a different offering cost and a different favor, and they also give you a new action you can take on your turn. And I really like this expansion. It's quick, it's simple, it's easy to integrate. I don't think I ever would play without this. I don't see a reason to play without this. It adds some, and maybe time will change that, as maybe over time I feel this is too powerful or it forces like people's hand. I don't know for sure. But so far with my plays of this expansion, every time I've played with these, I've enjoyed the addition this gives to the game. It adds an additional thing you can do, an additional timer mechanism, because frequently a lot of Inish is about timing. Do you take actions? When do you take actions? Do you pass, hoping it comes back to you? When can you stall things out? And this gives you something else you can do, sometimes because you want to, sometimes offering it up as bait to other players. That particular one, discard a card that can trigger a clash, putting this down in a way that possibly tempts somebody else to take advantage of it, can also remove a card that triggers a clash from the current game round, giving you the ability to possibly win. So you can use it as bait as much as you use it for yourself, or as much as you use it and just hope it doesn't work out against you. This adds so much to the experience. The one downside to it is I do find there's often a bit of a drag around the initial placement of it. Because when you're playing the game, you often, depending if you want the ability, again, usually you want these abilities. And so very often you don't want to be the person who builds the sanctuary in a way that somebody else can take advantage of it this round. Because you can only take advantage of it once per season, a season being a game round. Effectively, once you do, you flip the card over, and you flip them back up next turn. And so that first time you're building it, you're like, I kind of want to benefit from it. So maybe there's one that has you discarding an advantage card, and I wait to make sure that you're either not present or that you don't have any advantage cards left in your hand before I build it. So it adds an interesting time mechanism to the game, but you have to be mindful of when you build them, who's going to benefit by building them. But overall, it is an incredibly rules-light addition to the game that just adds more to it. There's very little to no downside, and it just gives you more things you can do and more variety to the experience. My only real complaint is that right now there's only 5 of them, and I really hope there's more than 5, because seeing 3 out of 5, like, I want there to be 10 of these, if not more, because 3 out of 10, you're going to take a while before you can actually see and cycle the different combinations of these that are added to the gameplay experience. Also, not to mention, they're beautiful with that gold foiling as well. So all around, this is a solid addition to the game, easy to integrate, and adds to the experience. That, unfortunately, is where the good news ends. Although maybe that's a bit more complicated. You see, the additional expansion is going to be the Nemetons. The Nemetons is the additional module, and those I'm conflicted on because I like it if it happens. I like it if it happens. You see, the Nemetons are going to be these over here. There's 6 of these that all give you a way to basically give you another deed in the game. Deeds are effectively things that help you win the game, so earning a deed can move you closer towards your victory condition that you're trying to achieve, and makes them very, very important. And the basic version of Inish has deeds. They're basic deeds, you get them for certain cards. These are special deeds that are for achieving a certain result, you can earn this deed. but it can also change hands. Specifically, the way these work is once they are on the board, let's say we have one down over here, and we'll talk more about that very soon, but once they're on the board, this one says, have the least sanctuaries adjacent. And so you can trigger these. Again, it's a new action that you have. So you're adding another action players can take, which adds that timing. It adds the timing of when do you take which actions, what do you do. But when you take that action, when you trigger those Nemetons over there, effectively what's going to happen is you're going to look and weigh up who is benefiting from this, who has the least sanctuaries adjacent. And you're going to go ahead and give that person this particular deed, although that can change. Because next round you can trigger it again, and if that involves someone else changing, if it involves a changing hand, you can't just trigger it for no reason, but if somebody else would get it, or even if it would go back to the supply because it's a tie, then you can trigger that again. And so it forces players to be more mindful of the map, of how those maps interact with the Nemetons, and then how you can go ahead and get these extra deeds. Now, all of that is great. I really like it, except for the fact that it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in the game because of the way the game set is structured, and I really hope this is a prototype that they can still change this, because, and I can't imagine my experiences alone, because even in the rulebook, they specifically say, when you play with the Nemetons expansion, it may never happen. And that to me is, from my perspective, that's bad game design to include an expansion which may never enter play. Because the way you get a Nemeton in play is you have to build out the board in such a way that you create a gap on the table for this to fit into. So specifically, as I add a tile over here, maybe I add a tile, keeping in mind when you add a tile in this, you have to have it touching two adjacent tiles. So maybe we add this tile over here. Great, awesome, we're working our way slowly towards it. Now we add another tile. We add our next tile over here, this one can go over here. This is how we get that, next, okay, great. Then we add another tile, we're on our third tile being added, keep in mind, granted with a 3-player setup. Third tile added, beautiful, okay. And now we can place out, can we? No, we can't. I think I messed it up. I didn't even, you see, I was trying to do it and I still couldn't do it. How can I make this work? Let me see. If I place this like there we go. If I place this like here, then we got touching there. Okay, you see, even with intentionally trying to do it, I couldn't do it. Tile number 2, tile number 3, and then you can place this over here. That's tile number 4. And once you've intentionally placed tile number 4, you have now legally placed all those tiles, and you've created a gap, and now the Nemeton fits into that gap. So even if a 4-player game, granted 5-player could be different, but even at a 4-player game where we take 3 very intentionally placed tiles in a way that you're intentionally trying to create the Nemeton gap around it, and the problem is, more often than not, it's not as clear that you're even working your way towards something that is that advantageous for yourself. Meaning there has to be a lot of dedicated effort from the players at the table, all to semi-cooperatively work their way towards having this expansion enter play, and it's not that you're working towards something that helps you, you're working towards this extra thing that will add to the game, and it may help you, it may hurt you, it may help somebody else. So you're kind of collectively working towards not a goal, but just the goal that you play with the expansion, if that makes sense. It's not something that I have found that players are incentivized to pursue to reward themselves. You're only incentivized to pursue it if you want to experience what the expansion has to offer. Which granted I do, but I don't want to spend my game energy working towards that. I want to spend my game energy working towards winning, because that's what you're supposed to do when you play the game. And so to me, I actually like the Nemeton expansion in theory. I like what it adds to the game. I think it's a nice extra little deed thing. It forces players to be more mindful. I really like what this actually does when it's out. But it comes out like 1 out of every 4 games. Again, granted, I don't have enough plays in my belt to give you a full breakdown statistically of it, but for me, it seems like it's coming out very infrequently in a way that I'm almost frustrated by it, and I want there to be different rules as to how it actually adds to the game. I don't know what those rules could be, I don't know how you make it happen, but I want to experience the Nemeton expansion, and I don't want to feel like everyone at the table is just trying to make it happen for the sake of making it happen, and not doing so because it's strategically sound. And again, the rulebook kind of addresses this. It says, you may not have it happen, which to me is baffling, because it's not... I don't play any game enough. Maybe this is a me problem. Maybe if you're playing Inish every single night with your game group, great, you'll see it happen 2 times a week, 3 times a week, maybe, who knows, that's great. But if I'm sitting down and playing Inish, and I might not table it again for another month, I don't want to play with the expansion and then possibly have it not happen. So the Nemeton expansion, as it currently stands, is something that I would always include on the hope that it happens, but it's almost as irritating as it is a good thing in its current form. So, My review of the Nemed expansion, taking into account the new tiles, taking into account the dedicated sanctuaries, and taking into account the Nemeton expansion, currently is a 3.5 out of 5. And I say a 3.5 out of 5 because honestly, the dedicated sanctuaries I think are great. The more tiles is a good variety. The Nemeton expansion to me is a bit of a miss, but with potential, so it's not totally bad. It's just, it certainly doesn't make your base game worse. That's for sure. There's no capacity of this that makes the game worse, other than the potential frustration you might have if you find yourself in the same situation that I currently am. But the game itself is not made worse. It's only made better or neutral, but it still feels like one whole module of the game doesn't act the way I would want an expansion module to act. So it's a 3.5 out of 5 in its current state. Keep in mind this is a prototype review, so things might change. I don't know. I hope they do, because I really would love to see those properly integrated into the game in a way that they constantly came out, or at least one per game or something, as opposed to very infrequently happening. Anyways, that is my review of the Inish Big Box as well as the Inish Nemed expansion. I think the Big Box is a fantastic step in the right direction, but also not so far removed that you have your current game is totally fine. You are missing out on slightly polished artwork and slightly adjusted graphic design. I don't think it's worth pursuing it, but it's certainly a great starting point to this series if you want to jump into it. And then as far as the Nemed expansion goes, I like it, I recommend it. If you're a huge fan of Inish, by all means get it. But if you're trying to be mindful of where your expansion dollars go, I do think you're getting a few expansion modules, a few additional tiles, and then half of an expansion, because the other module to me I don't think is worth paying for, considering it might not happen most of the time you play. Anyways, in any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.